Even as recently as 5 years ago, NASCAR looked pretty different than it does today. Since then, the Cup Series introduced the Gen 7 car, multiple tracks were put on or taken off the schedule, a couple were even created from the ground up, multiple Hall of Fame caliber drivers have retired, multiple rookies have taken their places, and multiple teams have either sprung up or undergone significant changes or shut down entirely. But as for today's focus, we're just going to be looking at the teams, specifically all the teams that have shut down since the 2020 season. At this time, 2020 is a pretty good year to start at when looking at the recent trends in NASCAR. It marks the start of the decade and the start of the most recent global event to seriously impact the sport. Additionally, the first few races that year serve as a great benchmark for the direction the sport was supposed to be heading in before being rudely interrupted in early March. Prior to doing my research for this video, I thought there would be maybe 15 or 20 teams that shut down for one reason or another between then and now, but that was an underestimate to say the least. I also realized there's a lot of gray area in defining whether a team shut down or not. For example, you could debate whether Stewart-Haas Racing really shut down last season, or if they just significantly downsized and rebranded into the Haas factory team. Gene Haas kept his ownership stake, the Stewart-Haas Racing shop, a Cup Series charter, and both Xfinity Series cars, so who's really to say the Stewart-Haas Racing team shut down? The same could be said for what was formerly Richard Petty Motorsports and JTG Doherty Racing, so to be consistent and eliminate a lot of this gray area, my definition of a team shutting down is every primary owner selling out at one time, or a team having not attempted a race in over a year. So with that, let's begin on the timeline from the beginning of the 2020 season to the beginning of the 2025 season, and talk a bit about every team in NASCAR's top 3 series that shut down in that time span, whether it be due to the pandemic, its after effects, the notable increase in high-budget teams across each series, or a different reason altogether. When the NASCAR Cup Series returned to the track after their over 2-month hiatus, there was already one team missing. That was Premium Motorsports, who had sold their operation to Rick Ware Racing. But unless you had been keeping up with the news, you probably wouldn't have noticed because Rick Ware Racing kept running the team's number 15 and 27 cars throughout the rest of the season, and even kept Brennan Poole as the full-time driver of the 15, much to the same back-of-the-pack results both teams were accustomed to. Really, the only difference was in ownership. Since 2015, Jay Robinson's Cup team was branded as Premium Motorsports, but he had been a full or partial owner of various NASCAR teams dating back to the year 2000 when he formed the original Jay Robinson Racing team in the Xfinity Series. The entire time, Robinson operated on a fraction of the budget of the best teams and never had any of his cars or trucks get to victory lane. His best finish in any series was a 3rd place with driver Kenny Wallace in the 2008 Xfinity race at Memphis, and his best Cup finish was an 8th place with driver Michael Waltrip in the 2017 Daytona 500. Altogether, between J. Robinson Racing, Robinson Blackney Racing, Nimco JRR Motorsports, Identity Ventures Racing, and finally Premium Motorsports, Robinson's cars made 350 Cup starts, 613 Xfinity starts, and 120 truck starts. The next of them to go also had quite a long history, as the Shepherd Racing Ventures organization only lasted 1 week longer. They ran the first Xfinity race after the season postponement, starting parking as per usual, and then never came back. The team was already on a shoestring budget prior to the pandemic and had been for pretty much all of its existence. Their origins trace back to 1985 at Talladega when Morgan Shepherd fielded his own Cup Series entry for the first time. But after that one-off race, the bulk of the original Shepherd Racing starts were in the Xfinity Series, where Morgan won 3 races in 1987 and 1 in 1988. Those would turn out to be the only wins for him as an owner-driver. Shepherd Racing continued competing in the Xfinity Series on an irregular basis until 1997, but despite attempting a few Cup races each year in 1998, 99, and 2001, it wasn't until 2002 when the newly renamed Shepherd Racing Ventures finally made the field. From that year until 2006, the team attempted to run a good chunk of each Cup season so as to take advantage of the small entry list and then start and park in almost every race. After only making the field twice out of 15 attempts in 2006 due to an increase in competitive teams, Shepherd shifted his focus back to the Xfinity Series in 2007, where the team would compete exclusively for the rest of its time. Running close to full-time each year with Shepherd himself driving as the primary driver, the team continued to start and park fairly often, and then almost entirely from 2012 to 2020. The team had one last moment of glory, at least for their standards, when in the 2019 Homestead race, they ran the full distance for the first time in over 6 years and finished a solid 15th place with the driver Landon Castle. Morgan himself was still driving that season and made his final start at Indianapolis at the age of 77. In total, Shepherd Racing Ventures ran 42 Cup races, 365 Xfinity races, and 44 truck races. Wauters Motorsports was the next to go after failing to make the first Truck Series race since the season postponement. Attempting their first race since 2017 with a proven driver in Eric Jones, the team essentially never stood a chance as the field was determined by an owner's points-based random draw. Founded in 2011 in a joint effort with Billy Balloon Motorsports, the Wauters team made the majority of their 46 truck starts as their own entity between 2012 and 2014. They picked up 3 top 5s and 7 top 10s, with John West Townley giving them their best result, a P4 at Charlotte in 2014. Jumping back to 2020, the next race at Atlanta was the final for yet another Truck Series team, Mike Affarano Motorsports. Beginning as an ARCA team in 2012, Mike's small operation only ever took the green 8 times in the Truck Series. Their best result was a P24 with Affarano himself driving, and their final start came in 2019 with experienced dirt racer Jake Griffin at Eldora. Similarly to Wauters Motorsports, Affarano's team was locked out of their 2 race attempts in 2020 due to the owner's points-based random draw. Yet another truck team was the next to go, that being Out Motorsports after race 7 at Kentucky. The family team for driver Corbin Forrester all out ran the majority of the 2018 schedule and attempted to run full-time in both 2019 and 2020, but failed each time. Forrester's best finish in the team's 24-race history was a P13, which he scored on 3 separate occasions. 5 teams each finished out the 2020 season, but never returned the next year. 1 Truck Series team and 4 Cup Series teams. Beginning with a truck team, as the Truck Series season finale came first, we have Diversified Motorsports Enterprises. The team was founded in 2012 as Team Little Racing by former NASCAR driver Chad Little in an effort to launch his son Jesse Little's own racing career. For the first few years, they raced primarily in the ARCA East Series, where Jesse picked up the team's lone win in 2014 at New Hampshire. Then in 2015, they moved up to the Truck Series part-time in a technical alliance with ThorSport Racing and continued to run a very limited schedule through 2019. By far the best of those years was 2018, when Jesse finished top 10 in 6 of his 9 starts, with the best of 6th place at Iowa. But as Jesse had signed on to compete full-time in the Xfinity Series in 2020, Chad sold the truck team to Logan Puckett, president of Diversified Utility Group LLC, who then renamed the team from JJL Motorsports, the name it had been running under since 2016, to Diversified Motorsports Enterprises. Fielding the number 97 truck for both Jesse Little and Robbie Lyons, the team only made 8 starts in 2020 and didn't have any remarkable results. And after a P29 by Lyons in the season finale at Phoenix, the team never attempted another race. Now for the 4 Cup teams, which I will list in alphabetical order, starting with Germain Racing. As the first relatively large-scale and long-lasting organization in this video, I must note that I'll have to skip a lot of details about the team's history, as we'd be here forever if I went into depth for all these bigger teams. Anyway, Germain Racing started up as a truck team at around halfway through 2004, and it didn't take long at all for them to find success. Partnering with NASCAR's newest manufacturer, Toyota, the Germain truck had plenty of speed out of the gate, and their driver Todd Bodine found victory lane in just their 3rd start, and then again in their 4th start. Surprisingly, the team and driver parted ways after the end of the season due to contract disagreements, but after Germain expanded to 2 trucks in 2005 and struggled to find consistency, they hired Bodine back prior to the 11th race. While the situation may have been awkward, it was necessary to resume one of the greatest driver-team pairings in Truck Series history, as Bodine went on to win 5 races throughout the remainder of this season, including each of the final 3 races, and then won 3 more times in 2006 en route to Bodine's and Germain's first championship. From 2007 to 2009, Bodine finished no worse than 4th in points, and in 2010 he won the team's 2nd championship after scoring 4 wins and keeping an incredible 6.4 place average finish. But that turned out to be the last great season for their truck team, as after Bodine and their 3 other planned full-time drivers all went winless in 2011, they shut down their truck team altogether. The closure was done both out of a lack of funding and because the Germain Cup Series team had moved on from Toyota to Ford. Their Cup operations began at the tail end of the 2008 season, and while they had a rough time with funding in their first few years with drivers Max Pappas and Casey Mears, and even resorted to start and parking various races from 2010 to 2012, they slowly progressed from about a 35th place team to a 25th place team over the years. Their best points finish was a 23rd with Casey Mears in 2015, and their best race finish was a 3rd with Ty Dillon in 2020. Dillon's result came at the team's final superspeedway race and was a good final send-off, as Germain Racing had announced just a few weeks earlier that due to their longtime sponsor Geico backing out, they would be shutting down entirely at the end of the season. All in all, Germain's entries made 425 Cup stars, 113 Xfinity stars, and 357 Truck stars. They only found victory lane in the Truck Series, winning 22 times there, once with Ted Musgrave and the rest with Todd Bodine. FAS Racing was also unable to survive past the 2020 season. Founded by veteran crew chief Frank Stoddard as Fastlane Racing in 2011, the team was essentially Latitude 43 Motorsports under new ownership, while Latitude 43 itself was essentially the Roush number 26 team under new ownership. Running at least 2-year-old Roush equipment on a small budget, Fastlane was expectedly off the pace, but still managed to run full-time without start and parking. In 2014, Stoddard merged his team with Archie St. Hilaire's Go Green Racing, which prompted the name change to FAS Racing. At that point, the team's best finish was still their debut, a P15 by Terry Labonte in the 2011 Daytona 500. In 2014, Terry improved their record to a P11 in the Coke 0400, but it wasn't until 2017 when Matt DiBenedetto first broke them into the top 10 with a P9 in that year's Daytona 500. That year was also the first that FAS Racing had a full-time driver. But after DiBenedetto ran the full schedule in 2017 and 2018, and Corey LaJoie went full-time in 2019 and 2020 with near-identical results, the majority owner by then of Archie St. Hilaire opted to cash out and sell his charter to the startup Live Motorsports. FAS Racing originally planned to run part-time in 2021, but they never did. In total, the Fastlane and GoFast identities made 354 starts in the Cup Series and tallied 6 top 10s, with a best of 6th place by Corey LaJoie in the 2019 Coke 0400. The third Cup team to follow suit and closing after the 2020 season was Leavine Family Racing. The part-time team initially got by with start and parking most of their races from 2011 to 2013, but for 2014 they signed on Michael McDowell and found enough sponsorship to run the full distance in all 22 of their planned races. But apart from a new best of 7th place in that year's Coke 0400, the team's average finish was still less than desirable both that year and in 2015. In 2016, Leavine Family Racing switched from running Fords to Chevrolets as part of their merger with Circle Sport Racing, which also carried over an alliance with Richard Childress Racing. For the first time that year, the Leavine team ran full-time with Ty Dillon behind the wheel for 7 races and McDowell for the rest. In 2017, his 4th year with the team, McDowell was finally able to run full-time himself in the number 95, and he did pretty well all things considered, finishing 26th in points and raising the team's best race finish to 4th place. In 2018, they hired Casey Kane in replacement of McDowell, who all but matched McDowell's results before calling it quits over halfway through the season due to suffering heat exhaustion as a result of other medical conditions. After Regan Smith filled in for the remainder of the 2018 season, Matt DiBenedetto was signed on for 2019 off the heels of his previously mentioned stint at FAS Racing. That year, the team made their final manufacturer change, switching to Toyota and alliancing with Joe Gibbs Racing. Although he led the most laps in the Daytona 500, DiBenedetto's results early on weren't all that impressive, but after a head-turning 4th place run at Sonoma, everything seemed to click for the team, as in the remaining 20 races, they only finished outside the top 23 more times, and DiBenedetto came back to finish 22nd in points. But of that incredible streak of consistency, DiBenedetto's most impressive performance came in the Bristol night race, where he led 93 laps towards the end, however was caught by a hard-charging Denny Hamlin with just 12 laps to go and had to settle for a heartbreaking runner-up. Despite the momentum they were carrying into 2020, the Leavine family team replaced DiBenedetto with the rookie Christopher Bell, who had won the most races in both of the past 2 Xfinity Series seasons and was one of the hottest prospects of the time. Bell upped the team's best points finish at 20th with 2 top 5s and 7 top 10s, meaning Leavine Family Racing would at least end on a high note as team owner Bob Leavine announced in August that year that pandemic-related financial troubles would force him to sell the team. The 4th and final team to shut down at the end of the pandemic year was Tommy Baldwin Racing. Beginning as a part-time Xfinity Series team in 2001, the team went on its first of many hiatuses after the 2004 season when they sold to Evernham Motorsports. Back with bigger ambitions in 2009, TBR started up again from scratch, but this time in the Cup Series. Working on a small budget, the team started parked many of their races, but still ran full-time. In 2011, they began running the full distances with the driver Dave Blaney, and although they typically ran around 30th, they were in contention to win both Talladega races. Blaney led 21 laps in the spring race before spinning off the nose of Kurt Busch in the closing laps. But in the fall race, he got his redemption and the team's best finish by far up to that point with a third place. Nevertheless, the team was in the spotlight much more in 2012 when they partnered up with Stewart-Haas Racing to field the original number 10 car for Danica Patrick, a collaboration to be remembered for all the wrong reasons. In 2015, TBR downsized back to a single-car team, but never really improving their results or budget by a significant amount. At the end of the 2016 season, they sold their charge to none other than Leavine Family Racing. Baldwin's team continued to run part-time in 2017, but then sold off the remaining equipment to Premium Motorsports in the fall of that year. But Baldwin wasn't quite finished, as in 2019 he fielded a Daytona 500 entry, but ultimately missed the race, before returning to run 22 races in 2020. Split between a variety of part-time drivers, the TBR number 7 car made its final race in the season finale at Phoenix with a less than glorious 37th place finish. Finally moving on from the costly 2020 season, one team only made it a single race further, and they never even got to hit the track. In the 2021 Xfinity Series opener at Daytona, qualifying was rained out and owners' points were used to set the field, which left out 5 new and part-time teams, including ACG Motorsports. Founded as Chris Cockrum Racing in 2015, the team primarily competed at the super speedways, with Cockrum himself racing in all but one of the team's 19 total race attempts. For a few years, Cockrum's team was in partnership with Rick Ware Racing, including in 2019 when Cockrum scored a 10th place finish at Talladega, the one and only top 10 of his driver and owner career. Later in 2019, Cockrum's team rebranded as ACG Motorsports, standing for their sponsor Advanced Communications Group. But after only running the season opener in 2020, and only attempting the season opener in 2021, the team and Cockrum never returned, as without qualifying in most of the races that season, they stood virtually no chance of making any other races. All the rest of the teams who survived past 2020 made it much further into 2021 before Gaunt Brothers Racing quietly ran its final race at Kansas that fall. The team owner Marty Gaunt was also president and CEO of Triad Racing Technologies, a body part, chassis, and even engine supplier for many Toyota teams between 2008 and 2020. But while Gaunt Brothers Racing seemingly had an advantage in that regard, without much help from Toyota themselves, their number 96 car was often well off the pace. Since their Cup Series debut in 2017, the team also only ran a single full-time season. That was in 2020 when they picked up a struggling Daniel Suarez and his abundant sponsorships, but even with the fourth-year Cup driver and Xfinity Series champion behind the wheel, they failed to finish better than 18th place all season long. In 2021, Gaunt Brothers scaled back to a part-time schedule and only attempted 9 races, the last of which coming at Kansas with driver Parker Kligerman, who delivered them a quite commendable 20th place finish in what turned out to be their final race. Evidently, a lack of funding prevented them from purchasing a fleet of the new Gen 7 cars for 2022. Lasting a single week longer was Spencer Davis Motorsports. Purchasing all the trucks from Rhett Jones Racing, with whom he raced for part-time in 2019, Spencer Davis started his own team in 2020. The owner-driver ran most of the schedule and put together 4 top 15 finishes in the first half of the season, although he began sitting out more often than not in the second half. Still, the team returned for another part-time effort in 2021, and even had Bubba Wallace race for them at Bristol Dirt, but following a P29 by Davis in the penultimate race at Martinsville, the team would never attempt another race in one of NASCAR's top 3 series. Sticking to the Truck Series, Cram Racing Enterprises was the first of the 4 teams to wrap up at the end of the 2021 season. The family team for driver Dawson Cram, CRE began in 2007 to field cars for Dawson all the way up through the late model ranks before entering the Truck Series in 2020. CRE began this season in partnership with Long Motorsports before buying them out completely that summer and switching their number from 55 to 41. Following the buyout, Cram Racing Enterprises ran every remaining race in 2020 and ran full-time in 2021, with Dawson as the primary driver and several other drivers making starts here and there. One of those was Keith McGee, who at Talladega in 2021 survived one of the most wreck-filled finishes in NASCAR history to give the team their lone top 10 finish. but an overall lack of good results or significant funding forced the team to cease their truck operations prior to the 2022 season. Although in 2022, they still fielded a part-time ARCA car as they had the year before, and they partnered with Gaze Motorsports for an Xfinity Series race at Darlington, where Dawson finished in 30th place. DCC Racing by technicality also made it through the 2021 season. Standing for Diversified Customs Concepts Racing and owned by Brad Means, the son of longtime owner-driver Jim Means, the team planned to make their debut earlier that season in the inaugural Bristol Dirt Race. And they stood a chance to win right out of the gate as they hired Ryan Newman to drive for them and had sponsorship from Coca-Cola. However, as Mother Nature would have it, qualifying was rained out, and because the team had no owner's points to fall back on, they missed the show. That was it for the team as a solo entity, but they partnered with the Rion Brothers Racing to field the number 34 truck for Dylan Lupton in the final 4 races. That was the plan at least, but Lupton only ran the first 2 of those races, so it's really unclear whether DCC was involved in the final 2, but I just gave them credit for it, and let's move on to a much more relevant team. The most historic and decorated of all teams to have shut down between 2020 and 2025 was of course Chip Ganassi Racing. Founded as Sabco Racing in 1989 by Felix Sabates, the original 42 car was purchased from Hendrick Motorsports but ran as a Pontiac. Almost immediately, their driver Kyle Petty found success, scoring a top 5 in the team's debut and finding victory lane 5 times in his first 5 years with them. Petty also finished 5th in points in both the 1992 and 1993 seasons, but from there, both the driver and team went on a downhill spiral. Petty only won 1 more race for them, coming at Dover in 1995, and he was released at the end of the 1996 season, the same year the team was renamed to Team Sabco. But neither the new name nor their new manufacturer of Chevy in 1997 would produce any better results in the following years. Joe Nemechek picked up their next win at New Hampshire in 1999, his only win in 3 rather unremarkable seasons in the 42 car, but it wasn't until 2001 when the team shifted back into championship contending form. The 2001 season saw a major change in leadership when, at the time, 4-time IndyCar championship-winning team owner Chip Ganassi bought an 80% stake of the team and struck up a primary support deal with Dodge. In the team's first year with Ganassi, their top driver Sterling Marlin skyrocketed from an average of 16th in points over the past 3 years to a 3rd place after also picking up his first 2 wins with the team. He carried that momentum into 2002, scoring 2 more wins early that season and leading the points for quite some time. But unfortunately, a back injury that fall at Kansas put him out for the rest of the season, and although he returned to full-time racing in 2003, he would never win another race. Looking back on the 2002 season, Marlin's substitute driver was Jamie McMurray, a promising Busch Series driver who Ganassi had planned to bring up to his Cup team in 2003, but was forced to bring up a bit early. Expectations were quite low for the young driver, who at the time was still searching for his first Busch Series win. However, in just his 2nd Cup start, the fall race at Charlotte, he held off Bobby Labonte for the race win. No asterisk, no luck, just one of the biggest upsets in NASCAR history. But while McMurray ran 3 full-time seasons for the team and put together pretty good results, he never found a victory lane in those years, nor did any of the other Chip Ganassi Racing drivers. Apart from a single win in 2007 by the open-wheel legend Juan Pablo Montoya at Sonoma, it wasn't until McMurray rejoined the team in 2010 that they were able to get back to regularly contending for wins. 1 year since the team's merger with Dale Earnhardt Incorporated to form Earnhardt Ganassi Racing, McMurray went on a tear in the Crown Jewel races, winning the Daytona 500 and Brickyard 400, and finishing runner-up in the Southern 500 and Coca-Cola 600. But despite a handful of other top 5 finishes, including his 3rd win that season in the fall Charlotte race, McMurray wasn't up front all that often, nor was his teammate Juan Pablo Montoya, who snagged the win at Watkins Glen, and both drivers would miss the chase cutoff. After another short burst of success, the team fell back into mediocrity for the next several years, but they had one last era of greatness, back under the Chip Ganassi Racing banner, beginning in 2016 when their 30-year driver Kyle Larson came into form. Larson's first win that summer in Michigan broke the team's nearly 3-year-long drought in points-paying races, and he kept up the momentum for the next 3 seasons, winning 5 more times and finishing top 10 in points each year, until 2020 happened. At Atlanta in 2021, Kurt Busch picked up his 3rd and final win of his 3-year tenure with Ganassi, which turned out to be the 27th and final for the team as a whole, because a month prior, it was announced that Trackhouse Racing would be purchasing the entire operation. In addition to their 27 Cup wins, Chip Ganassi Racing also boasted 21 Xfinity Series wins, and having competed for 33 years when including his past Sabco Racing identity, Chip Ganassi Racing is one of the longest-lasting and most accomplished teams in the sport's history to have shut down. The same cannot be said for the final entry of this Part 1 video, Starcom Racing. Founded in 2017 by the owners of Starcom Fiber and with management help from driver Derek Cope, the team made 2 starts towards the end of the year with Cope himself behind the wheel. Unsurprisingly, the then 59-year-old driver and inexperienced team were well off the pace, but Starcom still tackled the full season in 2018 and even expanded to field a second part-time car. In 2019, they downscaled back to a single car, their flagship 00, and signed Landon Castle to drive full-time. Castle, who had run the majority of the schedule for them the previous year, did a good job of keeping the car clean, but was clearly limited by the team's lack of funding. Still, an average finish of 29.3 was notably better than his replacement the following year, Quinn Half. Half, whose total experience in NASCAR's top 3 series, made up about 1 full season, was involved in numerous incidents early in the year, but none were more embarrassing than his late pit entrance at Texas, which damaged 2 competitive cars, destroyed his own, and led to NASCAR having talks about demoting inexperienced drivers to lower series for making similar mistakes. Fortunately, Half never made another mistake of that caliber, but the only things of note he did for the rest of that season and 2021 was get in more incidents than he should have and finish outside the top 30 most weeks. In November, Starcom announced that it would be selling off and shutting down at season's end, a decision likely sped up by NASCAR themselves, who had the option to seize the team's charter if they finished in the bottom 3 of charter teams for a 3rd straight year. And with that, we leave off only at the end of the 2021 season, and still with many more teams to talk about who shut down between then and 2025. But for my own sanity, and to keep this video under an hour, I'll stop here for today and make a second and final part for the 2022 through 2025 seasons. That will likely be out in around a month or so, and I'll probably have about 1 or 2 different videos out before then. But until then, thank you all very much for watching, and peace out.